Hey guys, what's going on? Dottz here, and today I'm bringing you my Stamina Warden PvP build for the Elder Scrolls Online Firesong patch. So I put this build together last patch, near the end of the patch, just because I wasn't really enjoying my mag decay all that much, to be honest. I really haven't liked the direction that ZeniMax was taking the class, and I knew that going into Firesong, since, you know, it wasn't really going to be changing all that much, that I wanted to play something different. And originally I was going to start playing Magical Warden a lot more, but then they made a bunch of the changes with like the frost stabs and stuff, and I didn't really want to make a crit build, and so I was like, all right, what else can I try? And so I decided to make a stamina offshoot of my old build, essentially, just kind of replacing a couple of pieces with a more like stamina focus to it, and it ended up working out really well, and I've been having an absolutely amazing time with this build. And I have to give a huge shout out to my friend Annie for kind of helping me put the build together and just talking through some of the ideas with me. This build ended up coming out really well. It's great in open world, duels, battlegrounds. I use it very successfully in all kinds of environments, and the build is honestly a lot of fun. It's got a lot of bursts like Stamina Warden normally does, but dare I say, it actually has quite a bit of dot pressure, which is actually pretty cool to say in a meta where dots are actually pretty bad. So very happy with how this build turned out, and it's definitely the stamden or hybrid in, whatever you want to call it, is definitely my main at the moment. But like I do always say before I get into the builds, guys, it's just what I like, what I use, and what works for me. If you guys want to change or do something else, go right ahead. This is just what I personally use for my own character. I'm going to try to make this build a little bit faster than some of my previous builds, so let's hop right into it. So starting off, guys, we're going to have our first 5-piece, and that's going to be Essence Thief, and that's going to be present on both bars. 2 lines of stamina, a line of damage, and when you deal damage with a light or heavy attack, you draw an essence from your opponent that goes near them for 5 seconds, and when you get this, you restore health, stamina, and you get a damage increase. Now, the reason that Essence Thief is such a good set for this build is that it is very dense on its 5-piece. Now you get a small heal, you get a ton of effective sustain, and you get a lot of damage. It is one of the most like dense 5 pieces in the whole game, just due to having that component of needing to physically move to the location to pick up the pool. But thankfully this build is quick enough to be able to do that. We have a lot of movement speed increases, so it makes it really easy to draw on that pool. Our back bar 5-piece is going to be Wretched Vitality, Magic Recovery, Stamina Recovery, Damage, and then when you apply a major buff or debuff to a target, you get 260 magic recovery and stamina recovery 15 seconds, and a minor buff or debuff will give them 130 magic and stamina recovery. And this is just simply done with your armor buff, so like your armor buff will just give you that amount of recovery. And we have this on our back bar because we have all major and minor buffs on our back bar essentially. And Wretched Vitality is so good for Warden because I do think that Warden is probably like the most hybrid class in the game right now. Literally I call this a stamden build, but like I think I literally use 2 stamina abilities. Like it's kind of weird. Like Warden's in an interesting spot. But yeah, the thing is the class liberally uses both magicka and stamina, so like Wretched Vitality is just like such a good sustain set, and it just, you get so much effective value from this. It's really strong. Now with the way that I have my bar set up, I end up having like 2 1-pieces available. So I do run the Gallant Chain. That is going to be the heavy armor trainee chest. Gives you a line of max health. Really good, obviously, to just get the health boost. Our mythic of choice is going to be the Mark and Ring of Majesty, 200 weapon damage and 2300 armor. Really stat dense 1-piece. It doesn't inhibit you in any way. Just easily my favorite mythic in the game, and I think is the best for this build because again, we want to be really speedy in this build because it allows us to pick up those Essence Thief pools really quickly. And then the front bar 2-piece that like kind of makes the whole build happen is going to actually be the Master Dual Wield. So this makes Twin Slashes deal 1635 more damage for each hit of the initial attack and the bleed. Now dots overall are pretty bad right now, and so you might be curious like, well then why are you using this? And it's just due to the fact that dots scaling is really bad. But the thing is that the Master Dual Wield is actually adding a flat amount of damage to every tick, not actually scaling it. And so because of that, we're kind of able to like bypass the shitty scaling and actually get some really good effective damage out of this. And so in this build, Reddening Slashes not only serves as our spammable, but it also serves as a really high damage bleed. So really good for that reason. Master Dual Wield, basically just like anything that can give your dots like a flat damage increase is a really good way to make like a pressure build. So if you've been trying to figure out how to do that, looking into something like this, Dragon's Appetite or other sets that just do a flat amount is going to be the way to do it. Now, in terms of weights and traits, guys, we are running, I believe, 3 medium. So I have medium on my helmet, my legs, and my boots. Those are all Essence Thief pieces. I have a heavy Wretched Vitality shoulder, light Wretched Vitality gloves and waist, and then the heavy trainee chest. So in total, that's going to be 3 medium pieces, 2 light pieces, and 2 heavy pieces. We are all tri-stats on everything. I am also wearing full impen with 1 reinforced. I personally do not feel I need well fitted for the sustain. The build has plenty of sustain, so I'd rather just get the extra defensive properties to make sure that, you know, I'm not getting ganked and stuff. And so the extra crit resist really is very nice. We also run 2 pieces of swift with weapon damage glyphs. Now this is just, again, to make us fast enough to be able to really easily pick up those Essence Thief pools. And then I actually also do run 1 arcane on my jewelry. I know that might seem a little bit weird, but running the 1 arcane piece puts my magical pool at a really nice amount, because again, this build liberally uses both resources fairly heavily. So I wanted to have very respectable stamina and magicka pools, and you know, that 1 arcane just puts my magicka at a really good amount that I'm pretty happy with, just from a sustain purpose. If you end up playing the build and you don't feel you need this, just simply change this to infused for more damage. You then want to run 2 maces, 1 Nirnhoned with a frost glyph and 1 sharpened with a restore stamina glyph. Our back bar is going to be a powered or defending, it's really up to you, 1-handed weapon with a restore magicka glyph. And then we have a sturdy Wretched Vitality shield with a stamina glyph on it. Now, guys, going into our skills, our first skill is going to be rending slashes. We're obviously using this due to the master dual wield. This is going to be our spammable, as well as providing a really high damage bleed. Now, you have to remember, this is our spammable because you're technically hitting with both weapons twice. So you end up getting a lot of damage out with this as your spammable. You also do apply the hemorrhaging status effect, which is another dot. Also gives minor mangle from the hemorrhaging status effect, which is going to reduce your enemy's health, which is really cool. It also does provide a snare, which just makes it easier to stick on your targets, and it does cost stamina. We also do run Deep Fissure. We run Deep Fissure over the stamina morph just due to the fact that we want the pen from this, so this gives us major and minor breach for a ton of penetration. The shulks also do appear twice, and it does cost magicka, but again, you know, the pen is the reason we take this morph over the stamina morph, and this is going to be our big burst skill, and what we're always trying to combo with Dawnbreaker for those huge damage hits. We also do have Arctic Blast. So Arctic Blast is going to instantly heal us, burst heal. The winds also persist for 20 seconds, stunning our targets around us 3 seconds. This is a really good defensive heal, very strong ability. It's kind of it's a big nuisance to fight against. Really do like it on the front bar. And it also does deal a good bit of frost damage every 2 seconds, and has a higher chance to apply the chilled status effect, which actually now deals more damage. So Arctic Blast can actually pump out quite a bit of damage. So really do like it on the front bar. We also do have Bird of Prey. Bird of Prey is here primarily, the Bird of Prey is here for a lot of reasons, let's be honest. Major Expedition on demand whenever we click the button, minor Berserk for being slotted, and it is also our snare and root immunity ability. Very good, very dense skill, and I do personally like it on my front bar just because, again, we have that minor Berserk, and we can really easily kite, stay on with people. It's just a really dense skill, a lot on it. Now, we also do run Fetcher Infection as my 5th skill, so I really like Fetcher Infection for this build because it helps add a lot of consistent pressure by providing about an 18k damage dot over 20 seconds. But you know, when you cast this ability for the second time, it deals 60% increased damage, which is quite a lot. And on top of that, it also gives us minor vulnerability, increasing our opponent's damage taken by 5%. There's a lot of damage coming out of Fetcher Infection. Now, you might be wondering, well, Dottz, why are you running Fetcher Infection and not something like Spin to Win? Me, personally, I have not been a big fan of executes recently. I do not find them very useful. If you do disagree with me on that, which is completely fair if you do, I know some people love executes, simply take off Fetcher Infection for Whirling Blades. But for me personally, I have found running the dot to be better, in my opinion. I just have for open world and especially for duels. I just prefer it, but if you want the execute, you can run it here. But I just find that this combines really well with rending slashes, and especially, like, in a sense, rending slashes kind of already can act as a pseudo execute due to our slaughter passive. Increases damage on with dual wield abilities by 20% against enemies under 25% health. So, like, it already is getting a small damage boost. So just another reason I didn't really feel I needed the execute, but if you want one, slot it here. We also do run Dawnbreaker Smiting, mainly just because there isn't a better ult to run here, but it combines really well with our shulks. It's a nice AoE conal burst. burst. Deals a lot of damage. Passively gives us weapon damage on our front bar. So basically the goal is to have the Shulks and the DB hit at the same time. Big burst of damage. And, you know, you are basically also Arctic Blast right before that to get, you know, stun everybody. So really going to be your one-shot wombo combo. Back bar, we run Leeching Vines as one of our hots because it's essentially 2 hots. You not only get healed every time you take damage, but you also apply minor lifesteal to your targets. So you deal, you know, you basically get healed when you damage them. It's a really, really dense skill. And personally, I find the burst heal from Living Trellis to be very underwhelming. So I'd rather get the double hot from Leeching Vines. We still do run Resolving Vigor. Even though it got a slight nerf, it's still amazing hot, and it just gives you minor resolve. So just gonna make us that much beefier, and it is one of it's our only stamina heal. It's one of our only 2 stamina abilities in the build, so we do run Vigor for that reason, just giving us a heal out of our stam pool. We do run Blue Betty in this build simply due to the fact that we have an overabundance of magicka skills, and my stamina sustain feels super good because it's covered by both Wretched Vitality and Essence Thief. And so I actually run Blue Betty to cover my magicka recovery, as well as the Atronach to cover it as well. I mean, as you can see, my magicka recovery is a bit higher than my stamina recovery just because I have other things covering my stam, and plus I can heavy attack for stam. So Blue Betty, just definitely gonna be the better Betty choice, just because it's gonna help you with that magicka sustain with how many magicka abilities that we do run. We of course run Ice Fortress. This is going to be your armor buff of choice, just for major resolve and minor protection, making you very tanky. And plus, this does give you both sides of your Wretched Vitality. So using this right when you get into combat will instantaneously proc that back bar set. But the good thing is that you have, you know, Leeching Vines for the minor buff. You have Blue Betty for a major buff. This is major and minor. Resolving Vigor is minor, and then you also have another major buff coming from Lotus Blossom. So Lotus Blossom is going to be our source of major prophecy. It is also going to be a source of healing us on light and heavy attacks. And I have to say, I'm super glad that I'm able to run Lotus Blossom now, just because, you know, Bird of Prey now is your standard root immunity, so you don't have to sub and use like an additional one here. And so like I was able to use Lotus Blossom, which now allows me to use Tri-Stat Pots, which is super cool. If you want to run something maybe like Crystal Shimmering Shield, you can run that here instead of Lotus, and then run crit pots for your potion slot. But like, I really like the Tri-Stat Pots for this build. Just because you liberally use both resources. So I find Tri-Stat Pots to be really useful, and then Lotus Blossom for my crit, as well as some passive healing while I'm light attacking. Plus, this thing lasts for a freaking minute, which is super crazy. Our back bar defensive ult is going to be Healing Thicket. Absolutely amazing ultimate, giving us a really big heal for a very cheap cost. And technically speaking, the heal actually lasts 10 seconds with this morph, which is why we choose it, because the healing over time continues for 4 seconds after you leave the forest. So technically when it ends, you are leaving the forest. So it actually is a 10-second hot instead of a 6-second hot, which is why I chose this morph over the other one. Now, in terms of our stats guys and everything, we are running 22.5k mag, 31k health, 30k stam, 1100 magic recovery with about 800 stam recovery, 4k unbuffed weapon damage with 7500 unbuffed pen, because we do have those we're rocking those dual maces on the front bar. But do remember, guys, that we are getting major and minor breach from our Shulks, so our pen goes really high. Resistance wise, we're at 17.5k on a front bar and 16k. 17.5 spell and 16 physical, and the back bar it's up to 19 spell and 17.7 physical. But remember, that also does get buffed with our major and minor resolve, and we also do have major and minor protection present in the build as well. We also do have around 2100 critical resistance. We do use the Atronach Mundus Stone, Bewitched Sugar Skull's buff food, and we are a stage 3 vampire. With the sustain in this build, we are very easily able to sustain a stage 3 vampire. We do run that specifically for the Undeath passive, a very good passive, which gives us a lot of damage reduction, 30% based on our missing health. Very good, makes us very tanky. We are at 49 into stamina, 15 into mag. This is where I felt comfortable with my resources, but you can go ahead and adjust those as you see fit if you want to change them up. Race wise, I can't recommend anything else except for Imperial for this build. It is just so good. It's a 6% cost reduction across the board. Magicka skills, stamina skills, core combat skills, ultimates, like literally everything. It's just super good. And on top of that, you also do get bonuses to health and stamina, which for this build is absolutely perfect. Potion wise, like I said, we do run tri-stat potions, and like I mentioned, we do use Bewitched Sugar Skulls buff food. In terms of our champion points, we are running Duelist Rebuff for 6% single target damage reduction, as well as Ironclad for 6% direct damage reduction. My bad. We also do have Master at Arms for increased direct damage, which helps a lot with our burst. Now, this might come as a surprise, but I actually do run Deadly Aim to increase my single target pressure. Now, I personally chose to up my single target dot pressure over upping my burst pressure. I tested this multiple times, and I ended up finding that I felt like I had more pressure overall with Deadly Aim versus Biting Aura. I would recommend, if you're like, well, Dottz, I don't care as much about that single target pressure, I'd rather go for the bigger AoE, then just simply swap this for Biting Aura. But for me, in the fights that I get into, I found Deadly Aim to be a little bit more useful. But again, neither one of these is a bad choice. Just choose whichever one you prefer for you. But I definitely recommend having Master at Arms for sure as one of your offensive CP. Red-wise, we run Boundless Vitality for maximum HP. We run Pain's Refuge for 2% damage reduction for every 2 negative effects on us, up to a maximum of 20%. We also run Relentlessness for a source of major protection when we are stunned or feared. And then we also do run Celerity for 10% movement speed increase. Really helps getting those Essence Thief pools, picking those up. And it combines really well with the Swift on our jewelry, which, by the way, is Essence Thief jewelry. I don't know if I mentioned that earlier. Now, in terms of a rotation, the rotation for Warden is really heavily based around like buff maintenance and stuff. So you really want to maintain Lotus, Ice Fortress, Blue Betty, and then of course you want to maintain the Minor Resolve from Vigor. Front bar, you just simply want to maintain Fetcher Infection and Rending Slashes on your opponents. And the basic strategy of the build is literally to just hit Deep Fissure and just hit Rending Slashes, and combine these two abilities over and over and over and over again until you eventually get your ultimate, and then you just do Deep Fissure, Arctic Blast, Dawnbreaker Smiting. Boom, big damage. Then when you need to heal yourself, I personally recommend, if you need a defensive peel, that's when Arctic Blast comes in handy. This is a really, really pain in the butt heal for people to fight against because you burst heal and stun them at the same time. It is a giant nuisance, and I'm sure if you fought Wardens, you know it's a nuisance. So really good to use this if your opponent is not CC immune and you want to heal yourself and defensively peel. It's also really good because it's an AoE stun. It's just such a good ability. I love using it, especially in BGs. But if you don't need the burst heal, simply applying Leeching Vines or Resolving Vigor to yourself is really, really good. You're essentially getting 3 hots off of 2 buttons. So it's really, really good to just stick those up. Another thing that you can do if you're kind of running low on resources, or you just simply need to purge or need a tiny bit of healing, just spamming Blue Betty will do that. Because you get healed every time the Betty is summoned, and you get purged every time it's summoned, and it's completely free. So I know sometimes when I've been fighting, I'll just block cast Blue Betty like this. If I'm really desperate, and it can actually save you if the if you're blocking enough damage or purging stuff off against the right builds. It can actually be decent if you're really, really, really low on resources. So something just to think about, and just a little thing to do with. It's a very niche thing, but it does have its situations where it pops up. But guys, I think on that note, that's actually going to be it for me with my new stamina hybrid, whatever you want to call it, Warden PvP build for the Firesong patch. Really good build. I've been having a lot of fun with it. Duels, open world, battlegrounds. It's been really well balanced, and I've been having a great time with it. Obviously, like I said, if you want to make any adjustments to it, go right ahead. But this is what's been working really well for me. And I actually do have some battleground footage that I'm going to share after, after this. I'm going to cut out all of the in-between stuff, but it was a really good BG. I think we ended up getting 19 kills, no deaths, or something like that. It was a fun one. So I'll just show you what the build looks like inside of a battleground. But hopefully you guys did enjoy the video today. If you did, I would appreciate it if you left a like on it. Any questions about the build, leave a comment below. There is also a written version on my website, linked in the description. Again, dottsgaming.com for all your PvP, PvE, solo, leveling build needs. And for more MMORPG content, please hit that sub button as well as the bell to keep those notifications on. Appreciate y'all stopping by today. Thank you very much. As always, I'm Dottz Gaming, and I'll see you all in the next one.
We about to turn it on. to turn it up.